Imagine being a soldier in medieval times. Just for 1 second, imagine how horrifically shit that would be. Fortunately, we live in the modern world, and unless you live in Florida, it seems you don't actually have to worry about being killed by a sword. You can just play MORDHAU instead. People don't just die in MORDHAU, they get absolutely obliterated. If you die in MORDHAU, it feels like you die in real life. You'll get decapitated, you'll get skewered. Sometimes, you'll just get frying panned. And that's really the beauty of this game. It's so brutal, chaotic, and often nonsensical. A lot of people have been drawing comparisons to Chivalry medieval warfare, and it's not at all unwarranted. It's a team-based medieval slasher with a tutorial that's also basically the same. Most importantly, however, this game is an improvement. Not only on a visual level, but the combat feels more fleshed out and less buggy, and the character customization is far more in-depth and interesting, without being littered with microtransactions as well. Although it might look like a bit of a mindless gore fest at first, there's a decent bit of depth to the gameplay, and certainly a lot to like about MORDHAU. In my very first game in MORDHAU, I came across a man running around the battlefield playing a lute, and it was then I realized that I was going to like this stupid ass game. Being a medieval slasher, the bulk of the gameplay is built around melee combat, which seems fairly simple at face value, but it also has a high skill ceiling that lets you pull off some really satisfying kills and maneuvers. You have all your basic stuff, your swing, your overhead, your stab. This one tends to make people really angry. And then you have your block, which can either be a timed block with a weapon, or you can be a real loser and hold block with a shield, though this can be fairly easily broken with a kick. The game then introduces some more advanced techniques such as chambering that really do add to the depth of the combat, meaning that a skilled player has the capacity to kick some ass. It does mean that there's always going to be some high level asshole running around just dabbing on everyone who sucks at the game, and while it's not on the same level as Chivalry is when it comes to whipping your mouse around violently to do unblockable attacks, it does detract a little from the experience when you see a man rotating like a fucking helicopter with his longsword. All that being said, the more chaotic gameplay in frontline mode allows newer players to still throw themselves into the action and have a go. Sometimes if you go in swinging, you'll do some real damage. That's what sets the combat apart in games like this and Chivalry as opposed to others like For Honor or Kingdom Come Deliverance. It's not some tedious game of chess where you'll lock onto one enemy and just go back and forth. It's not about trying to be meticulous or realistic, it's about actually having fun. You got ballistas, horses, catapults, and other structures and traps that really embellish the combat and make it more interesting than just a few blokes swinging melee weapons at one another. This game is definitely most fun in frontline mode, with two teams with a bunch of players battling it out. What made Chivalry fun was the big crazy battles with gore splashing around and death always imminent, and MORDHAU is the same, but the extra additions take it one step further. It's certainly more fun for newer players as it gives them the chance to just get in there, start swinging, and maybe rack up a couple of kills. There are also horses scattered around the map which you can just get up on and ride around the battlefield, which are quite a lot of fun. It's not something you can just spawn in on, but you can really get some ultra violent and satisfying kills on them. The game could still do with a bit of balancing, particularly for the melee combat. Some of the weapons are a little unbalanced, like the spear, but I think these days that's all bound to be changed in future patches, and I'm sure something else will be broken then instead. Archery does seem to take a bit of a backseat to melee combat, but it's still a lot of fun and super satisfying when you land a nice shot. Then there's horse archery, which is incredibly hard to do, but damn, if you could pull this shit off, you'd be unstoppable. You can also opt to play offline with bots, and while it's a good way to get a feel of the game, it's nowhere near as fun as it is to play online with a bunch of other people. There's a Battle Royale mode in this game, because of course there is. It's mediocre compared to frontline mode. You just don't have the same amount of chaotic shit that happens. It's just run around for a while and have a few 1v1s every now and again and hope you win. The part where I had to wait for people to join before the game began and we were all just beating the shit out of one another was more fun than the actual Battle Royale part. There's also Horde Mode, which is just not as fun either, partially because of the fact that you'll just have to sit and wait for the wave to end if you die or if you join an in-progress game, which is the most common way to get into the game mode. It seems the only way to beat the later waves is to just sit in a tower and exploit the AI, and usually you'll just join a game where this is already happening and just have to watch it for 10 minutes instead. MORDHAU is at its best when it's frantic and you're just throwing yourself into the battle over and over again, not when you're sitting around waiting for the next wave to start. Plus, I personally don't find it anywhere near as fun to play against the AI, it's just way more satisfying to take the life of an actual human player. And I mean that in the least psychopathic way possible. I think that this game is lacking a few more maps, considering there's only 4 to play on, even though it might not ultimately make a huge difference considering there's a map vote at the end of each round. I feel like more map variety is always going to be a good thing. That being said, the maps are laid out decently well, and while they're all fairly big, the action is still concentrated thanks to the objective-based gameplay of Frontline mode. I guess the same can't really be said for the other two. One of my personal favourite things about MORDHAU is the mercenary customization. You can totally customize your character and have multiple saved loadouts with different perks, weapons, armor and other cosmetics. The way that loadouts and customization work is very similar to War of the Roses. There are no specific classes and you can fully customize your gear and perks to whatever playstyle suits you. There's a surprising amount of detail to it as well. Not only is there different armor and weapons to pick from, but you can customize things like weapon crossguards and handles, the color and roughness of metal, and even the facial editor is pretty fleshed out. You can make your guy look like a clubman from Age of Empires 1. This alone is why this game is 10 times better than Chivalry. It totally ditches a class-based system, which I personally think is a good thing, especially considering that you can easily create different mercs with different playstyles without them simply being separate classes. There isn't a way to buy coins at the moment, and I can certainly appreciate the fact that MORDHAU doesn't try and shove in-game purchases down your throat. And apart from unlocking the weapons themselves, it's all cosmetic, so it doesn't disadvantage new players. There are also plenty of preset classes to players so that you can earn some gold before making your own custom character. They're a great way for new players to get a feel for the game and different types of weapons. Earning gold is pretty slow, and to get some of the cooler looking stuff you will have to grind out games for a while. I feel like they could give further gold bonuses for playing the objective as well, considering nobody ever wants to actually do that. It does give you something to play for though, to be able to deck out a mercenary with a sick new helmet and stuff, which combined with the fact that you can't just throw your mum's credit card into the game and buy all of the skins, only encourages people to play the game more. Visually, MORDHAU is very nice. On a technical level, it's beautiful. The lighting, texturing, the model work, the effects, all very much up to scratch and certainly the sort of thing you'd expect for the price you pay for this game. The physics and animation are really good. It really makes the combat more satisfying, especially when you really kill the shit out of some guy, and watching people get nailed by siege equipment was incredibly entertaining. I'm starting to feel that MORDHAU may have actually turned me into a psychopath. One thing that did irk me slightly was that it was sometimes a little difficult to tell which team someone was on. I feel like the team colours should have been something like blue and yellow as opposed to blue and red, because with the amount of blood spattered around everywhere, it did make it hard to tell if someone was a friend or an enemy at a first glance. So a slight design choice there could have really improved the visual clarity. The sound design is great. There are multiple voice options so characters can have different voices and voice lines which really add to the immersion and overall ridiculousness. There are also voice commands much like the sort of thing you have in the game like Team Fortress 2, which is also something I enjoyed quite a lot. Just running around saying hello to people before I brutally murdered them was very fun. The music also really adds to the atmosphere, not exactly Spotify playlist material, but it's that action heart-pumping stuff that really backs up the experience and tone of a game like this. What MORDHAU does really well is create a chaotic and fun atmosphere through the crux of the gameplay, its character customization, all alongside its visuals and music. This game is a really horrific but enjoyable experience. In the end, MORDHAU is a shitload of fun. It does remind me a lot of the first time I played Chivalry, but I feel even more fond of this game. It just goes one step further than Chivalry does, and rightfully so. It's more modern, it's more frantic and brutal, and I really enjoy it. It's not without its faults. It could do with more map variety, it could do with some weapon balancing, and it could certainly do with more than one game mode that's actually fun, but I feel like Frontline mode is the way that the game's meant to be played, and the core gameplay is an absolute joy to behold. Being able to deck out your mercenaries and having plenty of different weapons to try out really does embellish the combat and give this game a lot of replayability as well. You'll die a lot in this game, but every kill you get is so satisfying, and pulling off something impressive in MORDHAU is one of the best feelings you can get from playing video games. For the asking price of around $40, it isn't terribly expensive, especially considering its polish and content. I would definitely recommend buying this game, especially if you enjoyed Chivalry. It may have turned me into a bit of a psychopath, but all of the spectacle, blood and gore ensures that there's a lot of fun to be found in MORDHAU.